Kia ora koutou, and welcome to this webinar on working with property data. Duane Wilkins, I'm a Senior Advisor Geospatial Capability Building here at Land Information New Zealand, and I'm joined today by my colleague.
Hi, I'm Mike Judd. I'm a Senior Business Architect in the Addressing and Properties team, and I work and specialise in working with property data.
He sure does. He is my guru, although he hates it when I call him that. I'm sure. So yeah, let's have a look at what everybody has signed up for today. This is one of our GeoBytes webinars where we're going through practical talks and demos for GIS practitioners, and property data is something that I've always sort of been on the periphery of it throughout my working life, and I think it's going to be really useful today to share some of these layers with you. And then also coming up, we've got topographic data with Carl, going through all those layers of topo data. And we'll also have a stats and data with Anne McAllister, who'll be joining us on next month. Okay, so what we're going to be using today, and you're welcome to follow along with us, is a document which has all of the links that we're going to be covering today. And you can access that by going to hae.re/property, haere/property. That'll bring you to this document, and you can download, take a copy, or it'll just sit there until forever. Okay, so what I might do is, if we start with the full Land Online data dictionary and models, and we'll just read through that page by page.
Page by page?
Page by no.
Attribute by attribute?
I can't do it. I can't do it. Okay, well, let's have a look at it perhaps anyway. You can access that full Land Online. So where does the data sits in Land Online? But we're actually looking at a
Might be worth just sort of a quick briefing on what Land Online is. Land Online is the application that LINZ uses to manage property rights data. And it's really property rights data that we're going to be mostly talking about today. Yep.
Cool. Thanks, Mike. And I have gone for many, many years now without actually ever needing to use Land Online in anger. But I just want to give you a heads up. You can download this document. And when I looked at it yesterday, I thought, oh yeah, there's all the stuff, but I don't really want to know about all of this stuff. So this is just the table of contents.
This is one of those classic cases where the way the data is structured and organized to make it work in the property rights system is quite complex. But the way we can use that data in a GIS system does not need to be anything like as complex and complicated as the way it needs to be for managing the buying and selling and transacting a property, thankfully.
So here we go, statutory action parcel. So we'll just begin by reading. No, we won't. Out of there.
Let's not.
Let's not. Okay. This one though, now this one is of interest because this is the simplified version for the rest of us. Actually, Mike, I'm just thinking, oh, no. Hang on until we come to the next bit. So you can access this Property and Ownership Simplified Tables Data Dictionary. This is probably worth having a look at if you're a GIS person.
Yeah, it's still relatively complicated, but it reflects more what you're probably going to be using. Yeah.
So we're not necessarily going to go through this. I just want to flash it in front of everybody to say, hey, it exists. It could be useful if you're having trouble sleeping one night. But you can see there, that is the extent of the data model that we're going to be looking at today. But just know that that sits there. Actually, I might leave that up just in case we need to come back to that, Mike.
Sure.
That could be a useful page there. And it goes through and describes the various parcels and attributes. So someone has done us a huge favor. So big ups to whoever initiated this at the team. Saved us from having to go through that Land Online. Okay, click it. For having to go through that Land Online data dictionary. So this is definitely worth knowing that it's there, and you can reference it if you ever need to. So how should we do this, Mike? Should we? Do you
want to keep control and
keep driving?
And I'll just talk.
All right, cool.
So I guess the first thing we're going to say when we get into Land Online is related to the two data dictionaries we've just looked at. You'll find that there's two different sets of or groups of data in the LDS. One is called the full Land Online set of tables, and the other is called survey and title group or set of tables. The full Land Online ones are exactly as the data is in Land Online. The survey and title set of tables is the simplified one. That really is the one that we're probably going to be mostly talking about today and using in our systems.
So here's that full Land Online data set. So the good news is, don't worry about it. It's there if you ever want it, but that's not the one. These are not the data sets you're looking for. Let's come down here. We have to go all, because I've filtered it. This is the one you're after down here in group, survey and title. Okay, these are the data sets you're looking for.
So this is the simplified set of tables. Yep.
Cool. So in our page of links, we've got that. That's our first link. So I'm just going to bold that one. Done it. And in here, you'll find there are lots of layers, 37, which is a better number than 100 and something from the other one. Okay, the first one we're going to have a look at is, in the beginning, there were parcels. So let's have a look at this one.
NZ parcels. So all parcels in New Zealand, effectively. This includes non-spatial parcels and parcels represented as lines or linear features. It also includes current parcels and historic parcels and approved parcels. So this is basically the whole lot, everything. We'll come on to what primary parcels and non-primary parcels are in a minute, but it includes all of those as well. So if you want the entire whole lot, this is the place to come for it.
Including Chatham's and the Islands.
Yep. Every parcel there is. Yep. Historic, current, or approved. This is probably not the table you're going to want to use most of the time. But if you want it, this is where it is. NZ parcels, every single parcel.
Okay. What attributes we got on here? Let's have a click on something. So just navigating down here. So we'll use our place and tighter as a nice simple railway. Where the heck am I looking at? There we go. Oh, yep. So this is what we're looking at is a standard residential property. When I click on it, it's telling me that the appellation is...
That would be appellation.
Appellation. Appellation, okay. Learned something new today. Lot 7, deposited plan, number 16,208, or DP.
DP 16208.
The survey plan.
Yeah.
That's probably all we need to know from there. Calculated area, yep, 1,140 square meters.
Which may not match the area that your GIS system calculates from the polygon.
Okay. We've got one surveyed area and calculated area. So those numbers probably should be similar, but if not the same. But yeah. Okay, that's parcels. Parcels within this layer, all of these ones as well.
Yep.
Okay.
So I guess one thing about parcels, when I started working with parcels in a GIS system, you get this idea that it's just a layer. It's a layer of parcels. But when I started at LINZ and people started talking to me about the cadastre, I learned very quickly that that's not the way the data is actually acquired. So what we consider to be a layer of parcels is actually a collection of surveyed plans that have all been jigsawed together to create that layer.
Gotcha.
And that's what the deposited plan references. It's a survey plan created by a surveyor that's been sort of slotted into this jigsaw of other survey plans that creates this single layer.
You see there's all kinds of overlaying things here as well, but we'll come to those in a I kind of think of parcels as the foundation of every line that's ever been drawn, kind of.
It's a pretty foundational sort of layer, really. It's a base layer. It's a spatial base layer, so we're very familiar with it. And it is really where we start the story of property information. Here is a defined piece of land that we can now do something with. Yeah.
And for those of you using QGIS, oh yes, there is, sorry. There is a WFS service here as well. For those using Esri, we'll come to REST services shortly. Okay, there's our first one done. Parcel layer, primary parcels. What the heck is the difference between a primary parcel and a parcel?
So the NZ primary parcels layer only shows current parcels, so only ones that are current or live. It doesn't include the approved or the historic parcels. So now we're just saying this is what's out there now. This is the current polygon. So this is also only a polygons data set. So we don't have the non-spatial parcels or line or linear parcels. So this is a polygon layer, and it's only current parcels. This is really the base level data set that you would probably start off using in your GIS system.
And look, here we go. We've got a REST API there. So if we click on that, it'll give us access to the REST services. There's the LDS APIs and OGC web services for WFS. And of course, you can always download these as a chunk. Okay, so what do we got there in primary parcels? Owned by the Crown, public, Maori freehold, Maori customary land, foreshore and seabed, bed of a lake or river, road or railway invested in on local authority. So
what this doesn't include is non-primary parcels, which we'll come to in a minute. So this is only primary parcels, which is effectively that base level of sort of like a contiguous non-overlapping layer, sort of.
Cool. Okay, so that was primary parcels. I'm just going to try to remember to bold these as we've done them. Next one we were kind of three subsets here. So we had primary hydro. Let's have a look at this one.
Hydro parcels. So when the survey was carried out, this parcel was put aside for the use of usually a river, some watery feature. So when the survey happened, there was water in this particular parcel. So it was given the designation of hydro parcel or a purpose of hydro. So loosely, this is where the rivers are. However, since survey, we all know that rivers move. Since the survey was done, the river might have moved out of the hydro parcel, but the hydro parcel is still where it is still surveyed and showing where it was when the river was in it.
So let's see if we can just find another example of hydro. So you can see there interesting pictures.
It's watery bits, basically, or watery bits when the survey was conducted.
Okay, so that's hydro. And next one is primary roads.
So again, same sort of idea. When the survey was done, this particular parcel was put aside for the purposes of road. So it's called a road parcel. They are controlled or controlled by road controlling authorities, which is usually a territorial authority or the New Zealand Transport Agency for state highways. Pretty simple, really. You would think these are where the roads are. Except,
do tell.
Just because it's a road parcel does not mean the road was ever built. So when the survey was conducted, the land was put aside for the use of a road, but the road may not have ever been built. So and this is where we get unformed legal roads or paper roads from, and they're pretty common across New Zealand. It's a parcel of land that was put aside for roading purposes, but the road has never been built inside it.
Okay, I know where one of these is. It was right where my primary school was. Let's see. And of course, that example is not there. Okay, doesn't matter. It's somewhere in the data set.
If you start looking around, you'll find them pretty quickly. There are lots of them around.
Okay. All right, so that's road parcels. Now, if we took road parcels out and hydro parcels out, do we get this one?
Correct, that's right. So the primary road parcels are basically the same as the primary parcels layer, only with hydro and road parcels taken out.
Okay.
So if you wanted to recreate the primary parcels layer that we looked at before, you could just take the road parcels, the hydro parcels, and the primary land parcels and put them all together.
Yeah, so that looks...
We split them out because often people, often in GIS situations, you don't want to show your roads or you don't want to show your hydro parcels. You're just interested in your privately titled land. So we give you the option of downloading them separately.
Okay. And there we have primary land parcels. There's lot DP, deposited plan, blah, blah, blah. Do you remember what's DCDB, Digital Cadastral Database, but what does it mean there, do you reckon?
Yeah, so Land Online was introduced around about 2000. Anything that came over from the previous system was just given a parcel intent of DCDB. Since 2000 onwards, you'll find that parcel intent will have an actual intent to the parcel. So it might say fee simple. So the parcel is intended for a fee simple title or something like that. So since 2000, there will be a parcel intent that means something. Prior to 2000, they just say DCDB.
Okay, cool. So there's primary land parcels. And of course, that one doesn't have a REST service, but does have a WFS available there. Okay. Moving on, we have non-primary parcels. So far we've done parcels, primary hydro parcels, primary road parcels, primary land parcels only. And now we are looking at non-primary parcels.
Right, non-primary parcels. So they effectively take some of the rights from the person who owns the title and gives it to somebody else. So it's a transfer of rights. These parcels tend to sit on top of primary parcels, which is why they're non-primary parcels. Yeah. And they are things like covenants, easements, leases, units that have been created under the Unit Title Act, those sorts of things. And the intent is, for instance, with an easement, it's taking some rights over that portion of land and giving them to somebody else, like access or something like that.
So here's an example on our street on Johnston Grove. So the neighbours at some point they've subdivided and there's a new property house built at the back here. You can see there, this is the shared driveway, and looks like there's another on this side as well. So they look like they've covered both options there.
Yep, that would be a case of having an easement, an access easement. Yeah.
And similarly with this driveway just here. And I'm not sure what that, I think that's a divider between two properties.
Your title, or the titles, which we'll come to in a minute, will tell you what a memorial, in the memorials, it will tell you what an easement or a covenant is for.
Okay.
The problem, of course, at the moment is that the description in the title is not necessarily linked to the mapped shape in the parcels layer. So you have to do that yourself.
Let's just have a quick look at this one. So this is a covenant land for tertiary.
So you can see you're getting a parcel intent here, covenant land.
Okay. And that is, I think that's Titus School. And let's see what else we have here. Anything else interesting?
And if we went and looked at the title, we'd get a little bit more information from the memorial.
Okay, cool. All right. non-primary parcels. There we go. That one is done. So that was relatively straightforward stuff. Relatively. Now we get into titles.
Right,
So
we've sort of talked about them a little bit already.
what is a title?
So a title is what holds the rights, responsibilities, and restrictions that the owner of that title has. So basically, the title tells you who owns the parcel or parcels, because a title may refer to a number of primary parcels.
Hey, this one doesn't draw.
No, it doesn't draw because titles are not spatial. A title is just a document that says this set of rights and responsibilities and restrictions is owned by this person for this set of parcels. So the parcels are the spatial component, but a title is not spatial in and of itself. It just lists the owner, the type of title it is, like whether it's a freehold title or a leasehold title. So what sort of rights, responsibilities, and restrictions do I have? And then it gives you a reference using the appellation that you saw before, a reference to the parcels. Yeah, so it's actually quite important because this is where you find your owners.
Did I just teach you to say appellation, or did I say it wrong?
Appellation.
What did I call it? Appellation?
Something like that.
Okay, doesn't matter. I keep thinking that place in America.
So we tend to forget about titles a wee bit because they're not spatial, but they are actually really important because it's not a one-to-one relationship between a parcel and a title. A title can have many parcels.
So this is the piece of paper that I get when I do I buy a house and I get this piece of paper. Here, you own this house now.
That's right. You're buying a title. Yes, a record of title.
Cool.
Yeah.
I pay the lawyer $300 to give to me that I.
Yeah, that's right. Once upon a time, you used to get it as a piece of paper, of course, as well. These days, of course, it's all just recorded in Land Online, and you don't need the piece of paper.
Cool. Better up property titles.
Okay.
What's a property? What's a property?
Oh, what's a property?
What's a property?
In the context of what we're talking about today, a property is pretty much the land you own that's in a title. So in the context of property rights and the Land Online system, the property is effectively the title and the land it contains. On Thursday, when we talk about property data management framework, we'll take that discussion a little bit broader and we'll bring in things like use. How is the owner using a whole bunch of titles to form a bigger property? But for today, pretty much property means the title and the parcels it contains.
Okay.
Yep. So to save you guys time and effort of connecting your titles to your parcels, we've created a couple of tables that already do that. So NZ property titles is a spatial table of titles effectively. So we've taken the title and we've linked it to the parcels, and so we can create a spatial layer of that title.
Oh, here's something new. So there can be multiple parcels associated with a title. I knew that.
Correct. Yes.
But a title may only have one part in a parcel. Oh man, that sounds.
Yes. So you can part own. So you can have a record of title which only gives you a part share. It's called an undivided share, which means you don't own any one particular piece of dirt. You just own a percentage of all of the dirt in that parcel. So for instance, I could own 50% of a title and you could own 50% of a title.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. And they would both reference the same parcel, the same piece of land.
So, for example, with our home, both my wife and I are named owners. Is that
slightly different?
Okay,
but that's basically saying both of you own 100%.
Okay.
So that's in the same title. That's a title with two owners.
Okay.
This is saying there could be two separate titles, each of which only has a half share in the piece of land.
Okay.
Yes, it would be. and that's exactly right. So when you own a cross lease,
What's a cross lease?
It was a bit of a legal maneuver that was created to get around to make it easier to subdivide land way back in the day.
Is it kind of like subdividing, but without creating two separate titles or without having to survey off the driveway?
It means you're not dividing the parcel.
Gotcha.
Okay. So let's assume there's two cross leases, right? What it means is that each owner owns a half share in the parcel, and then they have a lease which gives them exclusive right to their house and usually some of the land around their house. But that's a lease agreement with the other owner. So you effectively have two different forms of ownership. You've got a part share in the land, and then you've got an agreement with your other owners to exclusively use a bit of it.
Okay.
So that's a cross lease. They're really complicated. They're complicated to manage and use. And one of the issues with cross leases is we don't in Land Online have a representation other than on the survey plan of the area of exclusive occupation. So that's not digitally captured.
Okay, that's property titles. And is there is REST service for property titles? Cool. And of course, all of these layers have got WFS. So that was property titles spatial representation. The table is the actual title.
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
And the NZ Title Parcel Association list is also a non-spatial table, and that's the table that tells us how to link your titles to your parcels. So if you want to do it yourself, if you want to take the NZ primary parcels layer and the NZ titles layer, this is the table you would use to connect them together. And it's the table we used when we created the NZ property titles layer.
Cool. So the good news is, don't worry about NZ Parcel Association list, title parcel association list, because it's already done.
Yep. You don't, unless you really want to, just use the NZ property titles layers.
Okay, now we have the very famous property titles, including owners.
Smushed.
Smushed. So how do we get access to this is the first question, because it doesn't show up when you sign into LGS.
No, and that's because this includes owner names. Now, owner names, of course, it's public information, but it is information about a person. So we have to put more security around the use of that information. So to get access to owner names, you have to sign up to a special license.
License for personal
data. That's right. And it effectively says that you cannot use personal data for marketing or commercial marketing purposes, basically. So you can't use it to spam everybody on the list with a bunch of real estate marketing or whatever you want to do. So it's a restriction around how you use the data because it is personal data.
And there are a couple of things here that kind of describe what you can and can't do for it. So for example, not allowed the data to be indexed by any public internet web search engine.
Not use the data in unsolicited direct marketing. Yeah.
And keep it up to date, I think, is one of the takeaways for me, although I don't think it is. It's essentially keep it up to date is one of the intents that I recollect from it anyway.
So to get access to these tables, you just need to email the LDS team and give them a reason why you want it. Yep.
So there's a link here in the document. We'll just click that one. LIN's license for personal data. You can then visit, please read all the terms of blah, blah. You can then visit the owner data controlled access group on the LIN's data service. And essentially you first of all log into LIN's data service, you click that link, and because I've already clicked it, it won't work, but there's a button that comes up somewhere and you go request access. It goes off and the magical pixies in LIN's data service, hi guys, you know who you are, they do a few checks which are secret, and then you get access if all goes well. Okay, so that's there. Let's just bold that one.
Yep.
Now back to property title, including owners, smooshed. What is the smooshed part about?
Smooshed. Right. So you were talking earlier
very...
about you and your wife owning your property, so owning your title. Yep. So the smooshed layer lists the owners jointly.
So if we click on there.
So there'll only be one representation and your names will be there together.
Cool.
Yeah. That doesn't mean that you'll still find there are duplicated parcels there. So you can see some of the darker blue ones. There are still duplicated parcels for other reasons.
There's ours in New Zealand too. Yeah. So we've got two.
There's a leasehold.
Look at that cross lease. So
yeah,
there's kind of this. You've got
that's right.
Both, and they're two interlinked. And
but in the case of your property, you and your wife jointly own it. Therefore, the names are put together, and there's only one polygon. And
that's what we mean by smooshed. It was the very descriptive term that we came up with yesterday. And if we look at a couple of others here, we've got Hutt City Council. Let's have a look down here. Wellington Regional Council. So generally, I find regional councils will be responsible, have the title on.
So that's all along the river.
And riverbanks and things.
Which is what you would expect.
And then we've got a cemetery, Hutt City Council. Oh, here's a double one. What's this one? So we've got Hutt City Council and Hutt City Council. The Lower Hutt City Council and Hutt City Council. So all kinds of
different.
And what's this
technically different owners because the name is
Her Majesty the Queen. And the Wellington Regional Council and the Golf Club.
So one of those is a lease, the other one will be the fee simple.
Ah, look at that, leasehold and freehold. Yes. That's interesting. What's over? Wellington City Council, fee simple.
So I guess the takeaway from this is that not all titles are the same. Actually, you have freehold titles, which are your base sort of level of ownership. And then you have other sorts of titles like a leasehold. So a leasehold means that somebody else owns the freehold and then they've leased you a set of rights.
Cool. And there's lots of holes, of course, because some of these are
state land or Māori land as well. So state land doesn't necessarily have to have a title. And in fact, lots of it does not. There's still parcels, but the administratorship is done through a different process that generally relies on a gazette notice, which is the government stating the intent of how that land will be used. And in some cases, that will be recorded as a statutory action on the primary parcels land, but not always.
And something else to know, there's no web service. Oh, there is a WFS, sorry, rather, but you need to be logged in.
You do, you won't see it unless you're logged in.
And it has the little padlock just there, but of course you can download it, as I've done many times. You can pick your projection. For those of you who are not sure which projection, just divert off for a second. The way that I remember which one to get, 2193 Buck Rogers from 21st Century. That's the little ditty I use. And 4326 is the other one. So you just keep scrolling through here. WGS 84, 4326. There's a whole bunch of them here that I've never used and never will use. But actually one of the webinars we'll do in the future, the near future, is on datums and projections for GIS users. And of course, if you're still using shapefiles, try and wean yourself off them into geopackages or geodatabases. They're far quicker, better to use.
And you don't have a 8-character file name limit.
Exactly. Or 2 gigas and things, which is important with this data set. Okay, so that was smooshed, and now we've got not smooshed.
So in your instance, you have you and your wife own your property. Those names are separated out. So you should see 2 two polygons for your property, one with your name and one with your wife's name.
Just come down here. Even though we've lived there for years, it still takes me a while to navigate down. Okay, so there we go. We've got two there now. One for he and one for she.
Yeah, so that's just taken the two owners and separated them out. But you can see it's the same title. It's still WN20C/517.
And that doesn't change.
That doesn't change. So that's the difference between smushed and not smushed.
And in all likelihood, the smushed one is the one you want when you're doing
yes.
GIS.
Yes, that's the one I tend to use most, the smushed.
Yeah. Because if you're doing labeling and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay, so that's not smushed. Smushed, use this mostly. There we go. Okay, survey plans. So this is something that I've found useful, particularly working with Maori groups, is the survey plan points. And these are still just streaming here. Of course, everybody be having a play. Hey, if you are having a play just now, try not to download too much data because it'll slow it down for us if everybody's on there. So these survey plan points, in fact, this is not a particularly good area as an example, but when you're looking at Māori land, you may want to know what's called an ML, Māori land plan. And of course, we're not specifically going into Māori land today, although we may have a quick squiz at Māori Land Online if time permits. But this is useful in identifying historical survey plans from the 1800s, which have some really beautiful examples that have a lot of place names that are lost to living memory. But that's one useful tool in being able to try and track them down as survey plans. And it's kind of the center of the survey. Okay, and this one, I thought this one, we'd just add this one in here for a bit of fun because I discovered this one day, and because we've got responsible people on our webinar, I'll show you what this one is. So this is where you can actually go down and you can find the survey marks themselves, and often it will describe what it is, whether it's a peg, piece of pipe, gate post, other random lead plug. So you know those little survey marks you see on the footpaths and things, you'll be able to find them in this data set.
So just a word, if you're going to go out and find them, they are legally protected.
Yes.
So do not mess with it. Do not mess with it.
Or Calvin will be on your case, and you don't mess with Calvin. Yeah, there we go. Spike bar bolt rod dog. Not the rover kind, different kind. So there we go. There's one actually in our street.
There's one outside my house that I actually went looking for and couldn't find.
Oh, there's one in the front yard. Okay, maybe that's, oh no, there's the thing. Yeah, it's in the middle of the street, middle of the cul-de-sac, just there. Let's see how good this imagery is. Oh, look, there's three. Ah, there's one there. Okay, cool. That's just a wee bit of fun, of interest. And hidden treasures. Hey, we know we're there. The hidden treasures are, for me, the REST services. So there are, let's literally go through these. So there are the localities, which are the suburbs. There is LINZ managed Crown property. So that's kind of a subset. Would that be titles or parcels?
That one is parcel based. So LINZ manages around about 12% of New Zealand's land area, largely things like riverbeds, also Crown pastoral leases. What that shows is the parcels of land that LINZ manages. Because it's state land, a lot of them won't have titles.
Okay. Let's have a look here. Where's Molesworth? Somewhere down here, isn't it?
Molesworth, a bit further north.
Is it?
It's in the Kaikoura's.
That one?
That one there. Yeah.
It's massive.
So that comes out of our Crown land management system, which is called Napolis, which is why you see a Napolis ID there.
Okay, cool. Building outlines. Of course, that is outlines, not footprints. I always get tripped up by footprints as something else. Outlines is the outline of the building. Footprint is kind of the concrete part.
Yeah, so the footprint's where it sits on the ground. The outline's what you see from a satellite.
What he says. Coastal mean high water. Okay, let's pass on from that one because I don't know exactly what that means other than what it says. But I know there's always issues with coastlines and things. There is actually a big project. Lynn's is working on joining the land and sea.
Yeah, JLS, joining land and sea. Yeah.
Coastlines and island polygons. That is a really useful one to know that is there. Save you downloading it, which I've done just recently actually. Having to do that because I got tripped up in the named rivers. One of the links is to a coastline, which was no good for me. I needed the coast polygon. So here we go. Primary parcels. Skip that one. We'll come back to that. Property titles. And then, of course, there's the river name lines, river name polygons, and roads addressing that we covered last week. So there's those hidden treasures. Let's have a quick squiz at Land Online, then we'll come back to that search one.
Yep.
So Māori Land Online is a very useful system to know that it exists. It is free to access.
The owners for Māori land.
And for those of you who are not sure what the difference is between Māori land and freehold land or general land, the way that I think of it, and a lot of work that I did in helping claimant groups prepare and present their claims, is in the beginning, there were the first surveys. And those surveys often were very, very large blocks or initial blocks. Quite often, to pay for the survey, they had to slice off or chop it in half to pay for the survey. And so then you have part 1A and part B. I can't remember, but generally it's like the B parts were sold off, and then you'll end up with this normal subdivision. But where you have Māori land that's what's called not alienated or not lost to Māori ownership, there was the Māori land, the native land court in the 1800s, which was basically a tool of colonization, to slice and dice that land into ever smaller sections until today you will get a quarter-acre section with 600 owners. And so there are a huge number of barriers to being able to develop that land. Looks like Māori Land Online is not working today, so we'll bail on that. There's also another system to be aware of, in particular with Māori Land Online, which does and is very useful, is tupu, which is developed through, let's have a look here. There we go. We'll just pick one here randomly. Tupu, which does provide a nice wee report for every block of Māori land, including all kinds of useful information about climate, rainfall, land use, facilities, rating valuation, all kinds of things. And that's generated in real time when you press this PDF button. Mike, should we have a look at this one?
So this is a new service that's come online as part of the rebuilding of Land Online. Previously, if you actually wanted to order a survey plan or order a title from Lynn's, so if you wanted the government guaranteed title, you had to either ring up our service desk or submit a form through our website. So that's all now been moved online. And the nice thing about this is it does give you a little bit of information about the title and the parcel that you've searched for. So you get a little bit of information before you actually need to buy it. So you can just type in, based on an address, you can type in your address and it'll come back and tell you what the title is and the parcel that it found for that address. Bearing in mind, of course, what we said last week about the somewhat loose relationship between an address and a title at times. So this is a new service that makes it easier to search for titles, get a little bit of information, and then if you want to buy it, it makes it easy to buy it as well.
probably about 20 million bucks for this one.
I think it's $5 for a title and $5 for a survey plan,
For the
assuming that they're digital. And previously, before the service came online, somebody in I think usually our Christchurch office would actually have to go away and find it for you and produce it and mail it to you or email it to you. With this system, it's all done automatically, and you usually get your title or plan within about 5 minutes.
Oh, okay, so this lets me search by different things. So
and you can search by different
if
things
I was
too.
to do something tricky and come over here, titles, this one here.
So not so useful if you're wanting GIS layers, because you'll still go to the LDS and download your layer. But if you want that authoritative plan or authoritative title, then it makes it a bit easier to get that.
So if I go there, then I come over here and I go title reference, donk, Freehold Land Wellington District, and there it is. Voila, same one.
Yes.
Cool. So that could be useful if you want to get hold of history without having to. So if you're buying a property, then you could use this rather than paying $300 and getting it through your lawyer.
You could come here and purchase a copy of the title. Yeah.
So they're still going to charge you and do that anyway. But
yeah, there you go, $5 per pop.
Yeah. And that will give you, what have we got here? Interesting things like mortgage, so public information, the date that, interesting. I don't know if that was the day we bought it. No, I can't remember. Very recent. And that was people before us. What happens if we click one of these?
I'm not sure you get to see much about it. No, you do.
Oh yeah, there was our lawyer.
Yep.
Swartner. She was smart. She's not working on that anymore. Cool. So, whoops, I just closed it accidentally.
Never mind. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And the link is there if you want to go find it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that's those two. Hey, I think that is all we had to show. Oh, look at that. We've got 5 minutes to go. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and we're going to have a look at all the questions here. Okay. I think the best thing here would be to just go through. Am I correct that there are also many easements and memorials that exist but are not in this non-primary parcels layer?
That's true. Yes, not all easements and covenants are mapped, or rather they're mapped on a survey plan, but they haven't been digitized, so they're not held as digital data in Land Online. That's true. Would
this be the case for cross leases, e.g. 2 townhouses on one title?
That's right. So the area of the lease in a cross lease, the bit that you have exclusive use to, is only on a survey plan. It's not available as digital data. Yeah.
Does the NZ property titles layer link to a layer that contains the easement and associated information?
No, not as far as I'm aware. Yeah.
Question, or you can buy a copy of the title, read the owners there. It works out cheaper if you only want to do it occasionally.
Yeah.
Cool. Missing easements. Will these be addressed / fixed over time? Could council supply LINs with what they have?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not aware of any program to back capture missing easements and covenants, but we'd need to go and talk to the Land Online people. Yeah.
Cool. So if we find out, we'll come back to, we'll add it into our link document. What is the difference between Māori Land and that TPK have on their website and the Māori Land online resource? Seen a Google map with Māori Land from the Māori Land Court and confused which is authority and should be used in analysis and maps. So for me, the authoritative one is the one you get from the Māori Land Court. And if you Google for Māori Land spatial data, at the very bottom of that resulting page, there are a couple of downloads. It looks like, I don't think the website's working today for some reason. You can download a shapefile or a geodatabase. One is a simple shapefile of Māori Land. The second is, I think they call it the advanced with a spelling typo, with the management structure, which names the trust that manages that land. as a geodatabase. I'd recommend the geodatabase version. However, it doesn't change hugely. It hasn't been re-released since 2017. And I understand that there are quite a few errors in it. So just be aware of that as well. TPK and Maori Land Corp do work together. There's a GIS team at TPK working on the tupu and related data sets, but Maori Land Corp is the authoritative data set as far as I'm aware. Cool. Can we get the link for the Google Doc, please? Absolutely. It is here, Heide/property. And I'll just put that in the chat. There we go. So there we go. That is us for today. Thanks again to Mike for helping out with this one. Yeah, I think this format for me is really, really useful because we're just looking at things that anyone else can have a look at, and that document of links, everybody can go there and have a look at the exact same things that we've looked at today in many cases. So thanks again, Mike, for sharing everything you know about that stuff with us. And we'll see you guys on Thursday. If you're interested, lins.eventbrite.co.nz, and this recording will be chopped and smushed and made available online. Okay, ka kite anō. See you next time. Thanks again.
Bye.